With all due respect to your mom, she was wrong about your phone use. It's not the smartphone that's ruining your life, it's you. Sometimes we forget that a tool isn't just how we currently use it. If you use a hammer to hit a nail and keep smashing your finger, you can make adjustments. It doesn't have to destroy your hand while you're getting the job done. You could also use a hammer to dig shallow holes in the ground or split wood with the claw. Each tool has many possibilities if you approach it with an open mind. Your smartphone, which is widely seen as a vehicle for brain rot, can be used very differently. It doesn't have to be a distracting source of anxiety and depression. The smartphone can potentially strengthen your mind. It can also help us avoid anxiety and learn in a way that helps us pursue our deep aspirations. I know that most of us have written off all screen time as bad, and with how destructive the smartphone seems to have become, it's fair to wonder if productive phone use is even possible. Perhaps the nature of the device is fundamentally harmful, but if not, how can we use the phone for our betterment? And if there is a productive way forward with the smartphone, how can we use our experience with this tool to inform how we handle the latest new tool for humanity? To find a way forward, we must return to the beginning of smartphones, because back then, we had completely different feelings toward this new device that may not have been entirely naive. Think about the initial promise of the smartphone. What did you imagine it doing for you? What dreams did you have for this incredible innovation before you slipped into habits that slowly made you more miserable and potentially suffering from brain rot? Back in 1994, IBM released the IBM Simon. It sold poorly, likely due to its high price tag, but it was technically the first device you could call a smartphone. The first popular smartphone was released in 1999, and if you're confused by this statement, it's because you've forgotten all about the BlackBerry. It was a business-focused device whose main appeal was its ability to email and its novel messaging system. It was still a phone that was almost entirely focused on communication. What we think of when we talk about the negative side effects of smartphones didn't come around until almost a decade later. The first iPhone was released in 2007, followed shortly by the first Android phone in 2008. This was an innocent and exciting time compared to where we are now. Most of us were simply enthusiastic about the possibilities of a computer the size of a calculator that could fit neatly in our pocket. Those early smartphones came with web browsers, games, and apps with endless potential. It was hard not to feel like these devices could make life much more convenient. Google Maps could be used to guide you to your destination. You could send emails while grabbing a coffee. You were set free from the shackles of desktop and laptop computers. Your life was suddenly much more flexible, and you could communicate with others more conveniently than ever. You could text with a full digital keyboard and message someone with various different apps. News articles became more accessible, and they were suddenly at your fingertips while you spent too long in the bathroom. The smartphone was actually able to reduce anxiety. You didn't have to worry about getting lost on the road. If you couldn't find the exact meetup spot, you could text a friend a pin of your exact location. You still benefit from all of these innovations today. Forgot to print your essay? In recent years, you have been able to use printers in the library or local business center by connecting your mobile device and printing it from the cloud. On the flip side, you no longer need to worry about printing your boarding passes or concert tickets. The only pass you need is your phone's virtual wallet. Whenever you leave the house, you're probably only carrying your phone, wallet, and keys, with the latter two already unnecessary for some. Your smartphone can be used to pay from your bank account, and you can also control your smart locks, provided that your home has them installed, of course. With their earlier generations, the possibilities of how smartphones could improve your life seemed endless. They were brimming with the potential to save you time and worry. But these weren't the only types of applications you could download on your phone. Smartphones also ushered in the age of mobile gaming. They were a fun way to fill your time while waiting for the bus or an appointment. These were generally not very deep gaming experiences like you would find on a console or PC, but rather easy to understand bites of amusement for when you were avoiding having to smell the breath of the passengers sitting next to you. In 2008, Facebook launched an app that allowed users to connect to their social media accounts from outside the house, or more commonly, in bed. Bad habits formed. An unguarded population enjoyed the convenience of access to social media, games, and other apps. Attention spans declined, and every form of human discourse changed to fit the mold of what succeeded on social media in generating positive or negative attention. We are now in a place where most are dissatisfied with how smartphones have changed their lives. Everyone is hyper addicted to their device and absolutely miserable as a result. Political discourse is a nightmare, and we all feel more insecure while sharing our lives in great detail. Those who are successful on social media feel the pressure to maintain their profile. They fear that a lack of content or posting the wrong thing will lead to their social decline and misery. People who are not good at generating positive feedback are constantly insecure with their online presence, feeling inferior to friends who can manage the perfect vacation photo every 2 to 3 days. How often are they going on vacation? It's all so maddening. Our smartphones are the ever-present gateway to social media, and the two have become synonymous with each other. We can barely think anymore from checking our phones every 5 seconds. After a brief moment of idleness, you feel the itch to look at another update of some kind, chasing dopamine and avoiding being alone with your thoughts. It's one thing to suggest doing something drastic like switching to a dumb phone or living off the grid. It's another for almost anyone to actually commit to those options. The reality is that we will not give up smartphones in any significant capacity. Our social and professional lives are too intertwined with them to disconnect. As much as we hate what smartphones have done to us, it's still a very convenient way to connect with people you care about. It's a great way to stay up to date on acquaintances or receive information about someone you know. It's also made leaving the house less stressful. We have a virtual assistant in our pockets. We live in a global community now, and for many reasons, we don't want to turn back. We're hooked in, and resistance is perhaps futile. So how exactly do we get out of this nightmare? For a while now, medical professionals have been concerned about the notion of screen time. This is especially relevant when we consider children. Too much screen time can have a negative effect on the developing brain. It can cause problems with speech, concentration, and the ability to comprehend language. Screen time can literally reduce the gray matter in a child's brain. Gray matter atrophy occurs in the frontal lobe, which is known for executing functions such as organizing, planning, impulse control, and prioritizing. Screen time can also reduce gray matter in the striatum, which is involved in suppressing socially unacceptable impulses and reward pathways. In adolescence, social media can regularly trigger anxiety and depression. It too is rewiring brains in ways we don't fully understand but are cause for great concern. In-person conversation is important for reducing stress and releasing feel-good chemicals into the brain. When adolescents are on social media too much, they're not physically meeting with others or engaging with their families. They miss out on the important benefits of in-person communication. For adults, too much screen time is also linked to anxiety and depression. The only difference is that our brains are no longer developing, so we don't have to worry about it shaping our brains quite so drastically. I've covered screen time in numerous videos, especially the ones about brain rot. One question that has not been answered satisfactorily is whether all screen time affects us the same way. From your own experience, you've probably noticed that reading an informative article isn't having the same effect on you as scrolling your feed on TikTok. You feel different during and after each respective experience. The obvious conclusion is that screen time itself is not giving you brain rot. It's not the screen giving adolescents unprecedented rates of anxiety. It's what you do with the screen. It's how you interact with apps or how you respond to notifications. It's how you are using that tool, not the tool itself. If we think back to how we first felt about smartphones in the 1990s, we can borrow inspiration to reorient the relationship with the device. Back then, we were focused on its potential utility, not how it allowed us to doom scroll nonsense into the early hours of the morning. We know from experience that some applications and functions have had negative consequences, but many still seem very useful and unproblematic. However, it isn't easy to pinpoint which applications caused which terrible feeling. After we put down the phone, we're often left in a haze, carrying vague negative feelings into whatever we're doing next. How many times have you stopped scrolling numerous feeds only to be cooking rice with low-level dread that can't be affixed to any specific app or content? Fortunately, more studies are being conducted to illuminate the nuances of screen time. A 2021 co-study from universities in China and Finland focused on apps and how they impact academic performance. The findings suggest that the use of specific applications can often improve performance, while the excessive use of others can reliably reduce it. One specific problem that most of us face with phone use is nomophobia. It's the fear of not being able to access your phone, that distracting sensation that has you reaching for your phone when you really ought to be focusing on your work. You want to make sure that you're still connected, not missing out on anything. In the study, social media, mobile games, music, video, and entertainment reading were found to increase nomophobia. These activities also coincided with worse academic performance in general and struggles with insomnia. However, two types of apps actually improved academic performance: learning and news applications. Although the latter helped with academic pursuits, news applications did increase nomophobia. This isn't terribly surprising, but it is good to keep in mind when using your tool. If you can start to frame some apps as positive and others as negative, you can steer your phone use in more positive directions. This was just one study, but it does point to what kind of smartphone use impacts our well-being. It's also important to note that the study only addresses the use of several phone applications. As more apps and platforms inevitably hit our mobile screens, we could use some more guidance to make our phones a useful tool again. And do we really need to write off these other apps altogether? That seems a bit imprecise. Much of the problematic use of smartphones isn't unique to them. We've been addicted to the internet for much longer than they've been around. For decades, we have been accustomed to the stream of video called cable television. Social media itself started out on computers before it became a mobile phenomenon. The smartphone has brought these negative habits together in a much more convenient package. And like these previous formats, you can't simply write them off. They had value depending on their specific use. Sometimes we want to watch a documentary on our phone in bed. We like messaging family members during a bathroom break. It's convenient to hear about a friend's birthday plan via a Facebook event. These are all examples of phone use that probably don't cause any anxiety or brain rot. They're just pragmatic uses of a tool. Writing off these specific applications doesn't seem fair or thoughtful without other considerations. If you were concerned about the impact of the maniacal owners of many of these platforms, then that's fair. But if we're just to focus on their impact on our well-being, then we need a more nuanced approach. To unravel these layers of negative phone use, we have to look not just at the different types of apps and label them as good or bad, but also understand why and how we use them to make a proper assessment. Video apps like YouTube can be distracting and feed us misinformation, but they can also enlighten us via brilliant video essays. You can find really great information from browsing the internet, and you can truly connect to others in a meaningful way on social media. That's not what most of us use them to do, but still, the initial promise of social media was to connect with others, and it's still doing that on some level, even if in the grand scheme of things, it's tearing us all apart. Dismissing any type of phone use altogether will limit it needlessly as a tool. But if we evaluate our phone use based on why and how we are engaging with it, we can start to wield our hammer with greater precision. And before you know it, you'll have built your own deck while calming the mind. In a recent academic journal, author Saqib Nawaz described the need to evaluate phone use based on motivations and outcomes. Instead of looking at how specific apps affect our well-being, the idea is to consider the intention and results of our specific use. When we use a phone for deliberate and productive use, he calls it effectual. When we are using the phone compulsively and in an unproductive way, it is ineffectual. And when the phone is producing bad outcomes such as depression, anxiety, and sleep disturbances, it's referred to as problematic use. If we want to use the phone as an effective tool and avoid its negative effects, we should evaluate it as honestly as possible. We need to ask ourselves, are you trying to do something productive on your phone? Did you deliberately make an effort to engage with it? Or is your phone use compulsory? You've probably had this experience where you're doing some kind of activity and you blink and suddenly you're scrolling your friend's feed on your phone. And I'm sure you felt that vibration in your pocket and compulsively checked a meaningless update. What is it that keeps you up at night? Is it scrolling on Instagram or playing another round of your live service game? You probably have a good idea of what's causing you to lose sleep, and you should take that seriously. We don't always know where our anxiety and depression come from, but mindlessly scrolling social media is a safe bet most of the time. The feed is an endless stream of triggers. You see a clickbait headline that warns you about the possibility that you're getting too much mercury in your diet. A former colleague brags about a new job that they don't deserve. Somebody is mourning the death of a loved one, while the next person is celebrating a big accomplishment. You put down the phone with your head filled with reasons to feel bad about yourself and the world. You didn't deliberately pursue these posts and feelings, they just popped up on your feed. Now, instead of doing something creative like writing or chatting with a good friend, you shrink from the world, depressed and anxious. You didn't make the conscious decision to feel this way. Your smartphone habits took you there. But if you wrote down those negative feelings and where they came from and made conscious decisions to avoid them, you could navigate your phone more effectively. In pursuing healthier phone habits, we can't be naive about the seductive nature of the feed. Some of us, unfortunately, need to get rid of social media altogether to avoid getting sucked in. We don't have the defenses to stop this from happening and have to go cold turkey, like someone quitting smoking. In some cases, recent technological developments have improved the way we consume media. Television and movie streaming services took us from absorbing a passive stream of cable TV to making conscious decisions about what we watch. It may have resulted in most of us sitting on the Netflix menu for half the night, but at least we made a deliberate choice on what to watch. In general, we could use more information on what phone use is ineffectual and what is harmful. The study about academic performance offered good insight, but it's only a taste of the overall phone experience. I often wonder about the efficacy of gamified learning apps. On one hand, they potentially teach us helpful information, languages, and more, but they lean into triggering the reward center in our brains to string us along. Duolingo notoriously tries to trigger a dopamine response with its achievement system. It also went after our nomophobia by displaying a picture of a miserable owl as an app icon to remind us about doing our lessons. These gamified learning apps try to get us to play them compulsively, and I wonder if the results suffer from this. Studies suggest that we don't necessarily learn more from them compared to traditional learning methods, but we do enjoy the process more. These studies are from an educational environment, however, so they're not reflective of the home use of an app. Ultimately, we need to constantly recalibrate our phone use and question what our smartphone habits are doing to us. Do they enrich our lives or make us depressed and irritable? In the absence of perfect information, you can try to be more thoughtful and deliberate about your relationship with your phone. You can turn off notifications and ignore your feed. You can take time to stop and consider everything that you do on it and remind yourself regularly to avoid the ineffectual and the problematic. There's a useful tool here just waiting to be born anew. We just need to reassess our habits, recalibrate our hammer swing, and be prepared for the next innovation that offers exciting possibilities, but also a new suite of potential consequences for our well-being. In addition to our phones, a new tool arrived just a few years ago, and we're still trying to figure out how to best use it. It can save us a lot of time, but it can also take away our critical thinking ability. The tool can be used to inform decision-making in a positive way, but may mislead if the reporting isn't properly checked. For some creators, it can enable them to take on projects that were prohibitively expensive or out of reach, but it can also be used to replace workers who would have been hired for these roles. We have an opportunity with AI to at least try to use it thoughtfully in our own lives. We can't control what the world does with it, but we can use it in a way that won't erode valuable skills and eliminate human creativity. It is a tool after all. We can decide how to use it and how best to swing. As with smartphone use, we can work towards values that keep the technology from causing us more harm than good. If we want to keep our use of AI deliberate and avoid slipping into compulsive behavior, we need to be wary of it casually slipping into our routines. You may have noticed Google's Gemini giving you a summary at the top of search results, or Meta's AI giving you a summation of a discussion. These are AI uses that are borderline forced on us. They're sneakily inserted into our routine online habits, often without us becoming fully aware. The Gemini answers often don't accurately reflect the best sources you get from Google search results. You need to verify the source yourself to find out if it's reputable and also if it actually answers the question you're posing. Fortunately, Google does at least place the content Gemini is sourcing next to the AI answer. On Facebook, AI summaries of chats initially seem harmless, but point to a larger issue with AI and social media. It threatens one of the few positive features of these platforms: the social part. Increasingly, content in our feeds and the pages themselves are generated by AI. The images that grab our attention and the copy in posts are not of human origin. And now, the summary of chats is AI and potentially based on a mix of human and AI commenters. Everything is starting to feel unreal. It feels less like the output of human beings and more like a social facsimile. If these trends continue, these social networks will no longer be social. We won't be connecting with others. We'll be engaging with AI content and people who may not even be real themselves. All of this is actively negative. It erodes our sense of reality online and disconnects us from real people. The only real potential positive here is that we pursue human connections outside of a social media landscape that no longer feels human. While AI is used in many ways that go unseen, we should seize what's in our control and prevent ourselves from compulsively using it. One of the most common and deliberate uses of AI is to generate writing. Office workers use it to compose emails and proposals. Students use it to structure their essays, which is a polite way of saying that it writes the papers for them. Writing is laborious. It takes a lot of mental labor, and not everyone chooses to work in a field that requires it. But it's an important skill that benefits humanity as a whole, and also the individuals who do require it as a part of their work or hobby. We generate ideas in writing that don't occur outside of it. It allows us to explore a topic in depth so that we may find new and exciting conclusions. Writing is where we learn how to make a substantive argument. This is a valuable skill that students miss out on when they get AI to write a paper for them. These are skills almost everyone would benefit from having. If you want to use AI as a tool for your own betterment, this is not the right place. There is writing work that is redundant and distracting from your main pursuits. Compiling meeting notes, for example. Using AI in these instances seems like a net benefit in every way. When deciding how to wield your tool, it makes sense to try and distinguish between writing that is good for the mind and writing that just wastes your time. I'm not suggesting that this distinction is always obvious, but it should be a useful guiding principle. AI is now being used for professional creative purposes. A recent holiday commercial for Coca-Cola was generated almost entirely by AI, and the technology is starting to be used in film. Many are concerned that this use or overuse is replacing creative jobs. In our growing reliance on these new tools, there are ethical considerations. Is it wrong to replace jobs with AI to save money? If you have a project you want to get off the ground, but the only way to do so is use AI for generating images, is that wrong? The project wouldn't have happened otherwise. There's also the power and water consumption to consider. Google alone has admitted that due to an ever-increasing need for AI data centers, its power consumption levels have increased by 50%. When the energy sector produces such a large percentage of greenhouse gases, is using power-hungry AI acceptable? Putting these ethical concerns aside, we have to consider the practical implications of producing things with AI. Do we not risk offending friends, clients, customers, viewers, and more by presenting them with something AI produced? Is it not insulting that a human couldn't be bothered to write to you or make something for you themselves? Why pay for something from an individual who put next to no effort themselves? An important value to keep in mind when using these tools is the human touch. There are many ways AI can support your work. The world is still filled with redundant tasks that AI is capable of doing in seconds, but you should be honest about when it crosses the line in doing the work for you, because at that point, you are not swinging the hammer at all. Technology is seductive. It may feel like we have little choice in how we use it. In many ways, it feels like technology is using us, but the reality is that we're still working with tools and we have control over how we use them. It's not the phone, it's not AI, it's you. Take advantage of that fact.